Hello friends, if you are new to my channel, welcome. Why don't you go down and press the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any episodes. For my fans and subscribers, welcome back. I appreciate you. Today we're going to be talking about Daniel and the Jewish captives. Not much else I need to say. Let's get on with the video. The author of Daniel wrote that Nebuchadnezzar besieged Jerusalem, but never says he took it. Instead, the author wrote that God gave Jehoiakim to the Babylonian king. This wording is important because it establishes God as history's prime mover. Jeremiah is essentially the template for the author's characterization in Daniel 1-6 of Nebuchadnezzar's divinely appointed role in world events. See Jeremiah 27:6. It also served as inspiration to Daniel's author to present the Babylonian king as a redeemed Gentile. Verse 3 shifts attention from world events to a private conversation between the Babylonian king and his head of household staff. This focuses on certain deportees who are to be selected based on certain qualities, given provisions, and trained. In this conversation, we not only get the author's first description of Daniel, but also that of Nebuchadnezzar himself. The book represents him as being knowledgeable and detail-oriented, as well as pragmatic. This scene is fictitious, as there is no evidence that Jews were placed as high-level bureaucrats in the Babylonian system. Even though this is fiction, it does have similarities to older accounts that detail how captives were to be put into positions in Mesopotamian court households. This may have reflected practices that had been virtually unchanged for centuries. According to the book, Nebuchadnezzar instructs that young men of the royal and noble houses are to be selected. The author does not give the social status of Daniel and his friends, but Jewish tradition states that they were of the family of Zedekiah. Apparently, Jewish tradition bases this on Isaiah's prophecy, where he tells Hezekiah that some of his sons would serve in the palace of the Babylonian king, Isaiah 39:7. Nebuchadnezzar also specifies the intellectual qualities as well as hinting at previous training. This may sound strange because few persons in the ancient Near East received advanced training as a scribe. However, children of the aristocracy were given education comprised of basic literacy and memorizing standard classic texts. Such socialization and enculturation would have prepared these young men to serve in court. Nebuchadnezzar stated that such youths would be, quote, capable of serving in the king's palace, end quote. A more literal translation would be, quote, to stand in the king's palace, end quote, alluding to the physical postures, the king sitting while the advisors stood. The purpose of the selection is given at the end of the list of qualifications, and that is that the king wants these young men trained in the, quote, literature and language of the Chaldeans, end quote. The word Chaldean designates an ethnic group of tribes in Mesopotamia that politically dominated in the Neo-Babylonian Empire that was founded by Nabopolassar in 626 BCE. When found in the Hebrew Bible, it most often references Babylon and the Babylonians, but by the Hellenistic times, the word took on the secondary meaning of the class of Babylonian divination experts. They were renowned astrologers, and this is how it's used in Daniel. This astrological knowledge continued to be prestigious throughout the Persian and Hellenistic times. Daniel 1 is historically implausible because it is highly doubtful that foreigners would receive such training. But the bigger question is why the Jewish author presents his characters as receiving such training in the first place. The answer involves the ambivalence of the conquered people toward the imperial power. This type of specialized knowledge is often attractive, but unattainable to conquered peoples. On the other hand, this type of knowledge evokes a response that one's own cultural traditions are superior to that of the imperial power. This fictional world seems to be the stage of cultural negotiation in which the author insists that the servants of Yahweh are superior to the Babylonian diviners, while at the same time expressing a desire to incorporate aspects of the imperial culture not only within himself, but within his story. In verse 5, Nebuchadnezzar breaks from specifying the qualities he wants in the young men in order to address food rations. Ancient Mesopotamian texts do testify to the practice of the king supplying food for dependents. However, the idea that the king provides from his own food and wine reflects Persian, not Babylonian, court life. The author then shifts to introduce the four main characters that he identified as Judahites rather than Israelites. The first thing the head of staff does is give new names. These are a mishmash of Babylonian, Persian, and Aramaic names. This name change is supposed to be the first step in completely changing their identities and roles, akin to a rite of passage. During rites of passage, there is a transitional state of separation in which the person receives knowledge to fill new roles, special food, and new names. Dual names were a common phenomenon as part of life under an imperial power. Jews often had both Hebrew and Babylonian names under the Babylonian Empire, and in the Hellenistic period, most Jews had both Hebrew and Greek names. Kings and their representatives have indeed renamed people in the past, and this has an additional connotation. The king bestows the new name as an honor, but he expects loyalty in return. In addition, double names indicate the double identities of exiles. The author represents these tensions not by the four objecting to the renaming or training in divination, but by objecting to the food. Both the head of staff and the four friends negotiate the cultural divide, but one thing is non-negotiable: the food. The reason is not explained. We do know that Daniel is concerned about a specific aspect of his religious identity. The king's meat might have been offered to a Babylonian god, or not slaughtered correctly, as Jewish custom permits, but as of the time Daniel was written, prohibition on Gentile wine did not exist. Evidence suggests that Jews decided for themselves about food practices. See 2 Kings 25, 27-30, Esther 5, 4-8, and 7, 1-2, Nehemiah 2:1, and Tobit 1:10-11. Food practices create powerful boundaries between ethnic groups, so it is not surprising that practices became more restrictive the more we get into the Hellenistic times. Well, friends, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, press the subscribe button, and if you want to know when I come out with new content, hit the bell next to the subscribe button. My Twitter, Discord, email, and PayPal links are in the description, along with the source that I used for this video. The best way to get hold of me is Twitter, followed by email. Also, please leave comments in the comment section. Not only do I love hearing from you, but it also triggers the YouTube algorithm. Keep learning and searching for truth. Here are a few videos from my library. If you have not watched them yet, go ahead and watch them and tell me what you think. Until next time, friends, goodbye.